Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and I'm not alone. I'm joined. Look over there. It's Felix.
Hello. What
Not
if I
only
wanted
that,
to be on the other side?
I'm sorry, Felix. I never know. I always end up pointing in one direction and then regretting it when I edit. Not that I'm editing this one. But also on this side, who's this? Why, it's only young Ollie.
What? Hello.
That's kind of... Oh, just look the other way. Oh, you're making much... I'm editing this. This is going to be horrible.
It's all right. I'm sure you'll work it out with various flipping, or maybe you can edit my hands with a mask.
Maybe I just don't care and you're just pointing in the wrong direction. Anyway, hello, everyone.
Hello.
Are we in F-Zero or something? Because we're in Port Town. We're going to talk about ports on the Switch too.
We certainly are.
Very good.
Yes, it's been, I think, nearly 3 months that the Switch 2 has been out, and we've seen a fair bit of discourse online regarding, sort of third-party ports. Are they good enough? Sort of, is the Switch 2 actually powerful enough to run, Mega Gun Show 24? And it was something that we thought was, in planning this video, that we thought was going to be a bit of a complicated, there's, either side wibbly wobbly. It turns out actually, though, in the planning for this, that we came to the conclusion, not to show our hand too early, but it's all right, actually. Like, we sort of think, let's get sort of like good examples and bad examples. And the bad examples list is not very long for any of us, all things considered.
Not at all. Most of the bad examples are like previews, like me getting to try Elden Ring, and it must be emphasized that those are pre-release builds. It just happened with Star Wars Outlaws that people got to play it at PAX, and apparently there didn't run very good, and then now gameplay has come out ever since, and it actually looks like it's running all right, at least in docked and stuff. So it's just like, you can't, obviously people who get to play it at these events, like me, we're gonna say, hey, this didn't run very good. Luckily, hopefully that's not the case when it comes out, and I'm sure that they don't want the games to run bad, and also looking at all the examples, luckily it just looks like, there's a lot of good examples, a lot of games that are actually that's actually really good. Well, to be fair, there's actually not as many examples just in general.
Well, there are. It's 3 months into the console's life.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a smorgasbord per se. But just very quickly before we move on, I do want to address the whole preview demo things, because Star Wars Outlaws is a great example. GVG, Steve Bowling, or Bowling, I'm never sure how to pronounce his name. Just like the sport, he was quite critical, but he wasn't allowed to film. And I think, as you say, it is most likely the situation. He was playing a build that was, could even be like 2 months old or something. It's not unreasonable to assume that. And, but the result of that is that now that the final build is available and it runs better, they're getting a lot of flack, and I really don't think that's entirely fair. And it may well be that Steve could have been clearer about this stuff, but people love a reaction, don't they? They love seeing game bad and then wait, game good. But this is the line we have to walk. And I don't think it's entirely Steve's fault if if the publishers or developers are showing a version of the game and it's not representative. They should be clear about that. But they're still showing it and saying, here's the game. I
feel like that's on the publishers.
To a degree. When I first played Cyberpunk on Switch 2, it didn't run brilliantly, to be honest with you. And I must admit, my first reaction was a little bit of disappointment. But then the final build came out, and, I was honest about it, and I said it didn't run amazingly, but I'm certain they'll be able to fix it for launch. Some of that arguably could have been, me trying to, huff copium or whatever it is the kids say. But the end result was really good. You can get 40 frames a second out of it on Switch 2. Not to be sniffed at. But yeah, I just wanted to be clear, show, that it's a complicated situation in that instance. We've got to be clear. Publishers have to be clear as well. But it's not shilling, and it's not, being a Debbie Downer, if that's still an expression.
No.
I've not heard that in years. But we'll go with it.
So, Ollie, what has your experience been with third-party games on Switch 2 so far?
So I think so far, the games that we've played so far is they're not as good as they might be on the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, but they are certainly at least acceptable enough on the Switch 2. You know, on the Switch we had terrible ports like the first one that
Mortal
comes to mind
Kombat.
is exactly that was the
Yeah.
one I was thinking of, Mortal Kombat 1. It was atrocious. We've got nothing like that so far. Everything so far has been pretty decent. I think something off the top of my mind is Hitman. Hitman at launch didn't run that well, and it was because they were pushing for that 60 frames per second. They weren't hitting it at all. I think, you know, they were hitting it less than they
Whoa,
were.
whoa, whoa.
You know,
You went into a small room. You could hit 60 frames a second easily, sir.
small room, no people inside. You've got a vacuum cleaner in the corner, and that 60 frames per second, perfect.
As long as the
Everywhere
vacuum
else,
cleaner wasn't on.
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would run.
You get someone coming in to have a look. No, it didn't run very well. They've just released a patch recently that locks the frame rate at 30 FPS. It is a lot better. It's probably not the most ideal solution, really, but it is better, and it's a pretty good experience now. So, yeah, I think mostly it's been pretty good. I think the test is going to come in the coming years when we get more and more ports coming over. You know, more graphically intensive games, and we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, so far pretty good.
Yeah, I often think of Split Fiction as an example. You know, it wasn't
You often
quite...
do it, like in the shower.
Split Fiction. It was. I don't think it was a launch game, was it, or was it? Did it come out just
Yes, it
after
was, yeah.
launch?
It was launch, yeah.
I'll shut my mouth then. It's probably just because we didn't prioritize it as a review, so it came out a couple of weeks later, and so in my mind it's like that didn't come out at launch. But either way, I think that is a really good example of just a good port. Yeah, you know, it's I'd say it's stuck at 30 frames a second. It does 30 and it can do 40 as well. But the visuals are solid and it runs well and it's rendering everything twice. You know, sort of, you know, admittedly only at half resolution and stuff like that. But even then, it's far harder to run something twice at half the resolution than once at full resolution. You know, it's just, that's just the way that it goes. And I think it's a really good example of a port. And I was really quite impressed, particularly, you know, cutscenes when it was just single screen. You got some really good visuals out of that for something that wasn't designed for Switch 2. And the same, you know, well, the same can't be said for, I have an example. Shadow Generations? You can get 60 frames a second out of it on Switch 2. But it is not, like, in motion, generally it looks fine. But you stop and, like, freeze frame, and you can see that it is relying very heavily on upscaling, and it is quite blurry and indistinct, which is, the end result is fine, but I do sort of think that with a bit more time and resources they could have got, you know, some better clarity out of that.
And you have to buy the whole game again.
That is a more egregious sin, absolutely. But yeah, the list of games, you know, sort of that are like bad ports that are Switch 2 specific. I had to keep telling myself that Tales of the Shire is not Switch 2 specific. Is quite short, actually, pleasantly short.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But I will admit that with Cyberpunk, especially, it took me a little while to kind of acclimatize to the performance on the Switch 2. I was so used to playing it on the Series X. You know, it was as maxed out as you can possibly get on a console. And going to the Switch 2, they did do a lot to kind of get it on that system. You know, the crowd density is much, much lower. And that took a lot of getting used to. You know, just walking around and thinking, oh my god, where is everyone? They're all gone. But, you know, it's such a minor thing. And the ability to play Cyberpunk on a handheld console, on the toilet having a poo, it's amazing. It's brilliant. So I'll take those concessions any day. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and I do think as well, this is something, you know, Cyberpunk is a great example because not only is it a big third-party game, but also this is at launch. You know, People, sort of the familiarity that developers have with the Switch 2 is currently at the lowest it will ever be. They're only going to get more and more familiar, get better and better at making ports. And that doesn't mean that we're only going to see amazing ports from now on, because a lot of it is down to resources and effort that is put into ports. But even so, I think all things considered, it's looking pretty promising.
I think the consensus is that games will obviously not run as good, but with the right time and effort. I mean, the Switch 2 has a lot of juice. I got to play games like Chronos, which I could see the PC build right next to me while I was playing on the Switch in docked. Obviously, it ran so much better on the PC. But
the PC using possibly up to 400 times as much power.
Yeah, exactly, right? So playing it there on the Switch, I will say, I could definitely get immersed, even though it was, the only immersion breaking thing was like a kind of thing, like when you use this ability, the fire, like, it just, yeah, it just kind of stopped.
So it's all he talks about. It's all he talks about.
It's all I talk about. Take a look at it right here. Boom. Wow. But otherwise, it was really good. I think it's definitely totally fine. And also, I mean, the only other thing I would like to touch upon is EA Sports FC 26, because I was quite disappointed playing that on the Switch 2. It's just far inferior to like the versions that we're getting on PlayStation 5, and obviously it is. But I was hoping we could hit 60. And looking over the footage, because I do have proper footage here, it is just 30, and the visuals weren't that great. It felt like I was playing EA Sports FC 25 on the Switch 1, and now just on the Switch. I don't know. Again, this could be a pre-build. Maybe it runs better when it comes out. But like we've said again and again, it all comes down to prioritizing the ports, because we have fantastic looking games on the Switch already. We have really good ports, Fast Fusion. Fantasy Life I got a really nice Switch 2 edition, and we also have games like Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong, Switch's own games. That is first party, but that's just to show you can get really great stuff.
You can, and something that I'm going back to Cyberpunk again, just because it's a great example. But
that's all he talks about.
The other day, I knew it was in the game, but I never really used it. You can just zoom in using your special cyber eyes. And I was just having a conversation with a character called Misty. And I was just like, I'm just going to zoom. What's the clarity like on Switch 2? So I zoomed right in. And oh my god, the level of detail you can get when, admittedly, it was indoors, I think the game knows when to prioritize what. But the level of detail you get, that's being rendered, you'll never see it in standard gameplay and resolution. And maybe that's something they could optimize, but Jesus, it looks, you sort of go, this is running on handheld? What's going on? I'll send you the footage when we're done with this, Felix, but it's just baffling.
Wow, look at that. That would probably be my reaction if I could see it.
Yeah, I should have thought about that in advance, but I didn't. And by comparison, a game that I played, Wild Hearts S, there's a demo available as well if you want to look at it. It's a sort of Monster Hunter-like game. Misses the point of Monster Hunter in my view, but that's not talking about the gameplay. It aims for 60 and it doesn't really hit it consistently, but it's not a bad experience. It feels smooth. But the texture quality in certain instances, it's so flat. Really thoroughly disappointingly flat. And I really think I would rather...
Like Denmark.
Yeah. Denmark, disappointingly flat. You should work for the travel
honestly.
board. Yeah.
I go to any other country, it's like, oh my god, a mountain! Look at that. That's great.
Felix, that's a 100-meter hill. What are you talking... But it just shows priorities, and we know that the Switch. I'm certain that the Switch 2. I think I would genuinely rather a 40 frames a second experience that looks better. And usually I'm all about the frame rate, but there are certain instances where it's just like this is just a blur, guys. What are you doing? And the actual resolution of the game is fine, but yeah, the texture quality is just really, really poor in a lot of instances. We're definitely in, I think, the wild west of Switch 2 ports right now.
Yeah, what we came down to when we were talking briefly about this before was that it all comes down to the future, of course. Like, I'm excited to see how games like Persona 3 Royal, that's not the Persona 3 Reload, there we go, how stuff like that will just look, because I wanted to get to a point where with games like that, obviously they're going to take a hit, because it's not a PlayStation 5, but that it still looks good enough that I'm not like, oh, I'm just going to play this on my PlayStation 5 because it looks better. Because that happened a lot with my Switch, where it was just like, I was just playing almost all my stuff on my PlayStation. But since the Switch 2 has come out, I've not really played, the only game I'm playing right now is Baldur's Gate 3, because that's not on Switch 2. But if it was, maybe I'll play it there.
Yeah, I think the future is going to be the real test. You know, the game that comes to mind for me is Resident Evil Requiem, and probably Onimusha as well. We know that Capcom has dev kits because they brought out Street Fighter 6, they brought out Kunitsugami, so they already have some Switch 2 games under their belt. But they've announced Requiem, Onimusha, and they've said, well, they've not said, but there is no Switch 2 versions of those games. They're just for PS5 and Xbox Series X and S and PC. So they've obviously made some decision at some point, okay, we can't release those games on the Switch 2. So it kind of comes down to, okay, well, are those games too graphically intensive or not? Because you also have to consider, well, they obviously have to optimize them for the Series S. And
Yeah.
if they can optimize them for the Series S, then chances are they probably can for the Switch 2 as well. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a, as you say, a bit of a wild west. We don't really know what's going to happen.
I certainly don't disagree with you or Mr. Lasso over there. But I have just had a thought regarding the Series S, and I don't disagree with it whatsoever. And the comparisons are a fair few developers have said the Switch 2 and the Series S, whilst they aren't the same, they are comparable. I imagine we're talking docked mode. Handheld is a different game entirely. As I've seen with some Star Wars Outlaws footage, and docked looks like it's really relying on upscaling like massively, but it looks okay, all things considered. Still not hitting a solid 30. Sorry to anyone who thinks it is, but my eyes, unless it's an error in the capture or the upload or something like that, my eyes don't fail me. The handheld footage has there's some weird stuff going on, but it's hard to pass too much judgment because it is somebody filming a screen. But it does look like that there's some massive interpolation going on. But again, can't make any judgments just yet. But if it is close to what I've seen, that they're almost two different consoles in a sense. But we do know that there are plenty of games like Cyberpunk. The only example I have up my sleeve. That's not fair at all. I've said Split Fiction. Cyberpunk runs really, I think, quite well in handheld mode as well. Definitely better docked, but that is just part and parcel with the Switch 2. Handheld is always going to be worse, with a few exceptions. I think there were some Switch games that technically, as in Switch 1 games, that technically ran better in handheld, but I think that's because it was targeting 720p. A matter for Digital Foundry, perhaps, and not yours truly. But there you have it. Those are our thoughts on the third-party situation on the Switch. But what about you? What do you think? We're only 3 people. 3 standard people. Let us know with a comment down below your thoughts, because you may be even more qualified than the person sitting next to you. But for now, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you consider just how optimized that subscribe button is and know that it's only going to get better, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.